My daughter refused to come to the hospital when I was on the verge of death because she was celebrating her husband's birthday. I'm busy, she said, even though the doctors begged her to hurry. 2 weeks later, I called the bank and did what I had to do, after which my daughter burst into my house in a panic, but I had already made my choice. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. The steady beeping pulled me back from somewhere dark and distant. My eyelids felt heavy as concrete blocks, and when I finally forced them open, harsh fluorescent lights stabbed through my skull like needles. Mr. Dunn, can you hear me? A woman's voice, professional but warm. I tried to speak, but my throat felt like sandpaper. The room swam around me. White walls, machines with blinking lights, tubes snaking from my arms. My chest ached with each breath. What? I managed to croak. What happened to me? The nurse leaned closer, her badge reading, Janet. She had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. You had a heart attack, Mr. Dunn. You're in Northwestern Memorial's intensive care unit. It's Tuesday afternoon, April 15th. Tuesday? I remembered leaving for the grocery store on Monday morning. Everything after that was blank. How long have I been here? Since yesterday evening. The paramedics brought you in around 7 p.m. She adjusted something on one of the machines. You scared us for a while there. A doctor appeared at my bedside, young, tired-looking, with a stethoscope draped around his neck like a badge of authority. He pressed the cold metal against my chest, frowning at whatever he heard. Mr. Dunn, I'm Dr. Martinez. Your heart suffered significant damage, but you're stable now. We need to monitor you closely over the next few days. Will I be okay? The question came out weaker than I intended. With proper treatment and lifestyle changes, many patients recover well from heart attacks. He made notes on his clipboard. We'll need to discuss medication, diet modifications, and follow-up care. I nodded, my engineer's mind automatically cataloging the information, trying to process the technical aspects. Heart attack, significant damage. Monitor closely. The words felt foreign, like they belonged to someone else's life. Janet adjusted my IV drip. Your blood pressure is improving. Are you experiencing any chest pain right now? Some? I shifted slightly and pain shot through my torso. It feels like someone's sitting on my chest. That's normal after what you've been through, Dr. Martinez said. We'll manage your pain with medication, but don't hesitate to call if it gets worse. The afternoon passed in a blur of medical procedures. Blood draws, EKG readings, medication adjustments. Nurses came and went with practiced efficiency, checking my vitals, asking about my pain levels, explaining what each machine did. By evening, they deemed me stable enough to transfer to a regular room. Janet helped coordinate the move, wheeling my bed through sterile corridors, lined with identical doors. Room 347, she announced as we settled into the new space. This will be more comfortable for you. The room had a window facing west, and through it I could see the city lights beginning to twinkle as darkness fell. Chicago looked different from up here, smaller, more manageable. The view reminded me of the blueprints I used to study, everything laid out in neat, logical patterns. Dr. Ellis will be by to see you shortly, Janet said, checking the monitors one final time. He's your cardiologist. Good man. You'll like him. I settled back against the pillows, exhaustion weighing down my limbs. My body felt foreign, unreliable in ways I'd never experienced. At 68, I'd always prided myself on being independent, capable. Now I couldn't even sit up without assistance. The window gradually darkened as evening settled over the city. Somewhere out there, life continued as normal. People heading home from work, families gathering for dinner, children playing in parks. Meanwhile, I lay connected to machines that kept track of every beat of my damaged heart. Dr. Ellis knocked gently before entering, his presence immediately commanding respect. Tall and distinguished, with silver-threaded hair and wire-rimmed glasses, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who delivered difficult news many times before. Benjamin, I'm Dr. Grover Ellis. He pulled a chair close to my bed and sat down, opening a thick medical chart. How are you feeling this evening? Like I've been hit by a truck, I admitted, but better than this morning, I suppose. He smiled briefly, then grew serious. I need to speak with you frankly about your condition. The heart attack was severe. What we call a STEMI, affecting the main artery supplying blood to your heart muscle. I nodded, my engineering background helping me grasp the mechanical nature of the problem. Dr. Ellis pulled out an EKG printout, the zigzag lines looking like some abstract art. See this section here? This shows the damage to your left anterior descending artery. We managed to open it with emergency medication, but you've lost about 20% of your heart muscle. What does that mean for my future? With proper treatment, many patients live full lives after heart attacks like yours. But I won't lie to you. It was touch and go for several hours. He leaned forward slightly. Benjamin, I need to ask you something. Do you have family we should contact? Emergency contacts? My chest tightened, though I couldn't tell if it was emotional or physical. My daughter, Agnes. She lives in Lincoln Park with her husband. Dr. Ellis consulted his notes. I actually tried calling her yesterday when you were admitted. The situation was critical, and we thought you might not make it through the night. Something in his tone made my stomach clench. You spoke with her? I did. He hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. Benjamin, I've been practicing cardiology for 25 years. I've made thousands of these calls to family members. Usually, when I tell someone their father has had a massive heart attack and might not survive the night. What did she say? My voice came out barely above a whisper. Dr. Ellis looked down at his hands, then back at me with genuine compassion. She said she was busy, that it was her husband's birthday and she couldn't leave the party. The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt my heart rate monitor beep faster as my pulse spiked. Even when you told her it might be my last night? Unfortunately, yes. His voice was gentle but clear. I explained the severity, told her you were asking for her. She said she'd try to visit sometime this week if her schedule permitted. I stared at the ceiling, processing this information. The daughter I'd raised, educated, supported through every crisis of her adult life, couldn't be bothered to leave a birthday party when I was dying. I'm very sorry to have to tell you this, Dr. Ellis continued. I debated whether to share it at all, but I believe patients have the right to know about their family's response to medical emergencies. No, you were right to tell me. My voice sounded hollow, even to myself. I needed to know. He stayed for a few more minutes, explaining medication schedules and recovery expectations, but I barely heard him. My mind kept replaying his words. She was busy. Her husband's birthday. Couldn't leave the party. I'll check on you tomorrow morning, Dr. Ellis said, standing. Try to get some rest. Your body needs time to heal. After he left, the room felt impossibly quiet, except for the steady beeping of my heart monitor. Through the window, Chicago's lights stretched endlessly, each one representing someone's life, someone's priorities. Agnes had made her priorities clear. The door clicked shut, leaving me alone with the devastating truth. I shifted in bed, trying to find a comfortable position, but the ache in my chest had nothing to do with the heart attack now. She was busy. It was her husband's birthday. I stared at the city lights through my window, each twinkling bulb a reminder of all the normal families out there. Families where daughters rush to their father's bedside when he's dying. Maybe Dr. Ellis misunderstood. Maybe Agnes didn't grasp the severity. I knew her. She could be scattered, focused on her own world, but surely when faced with her father's mortality. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't the first time Agnes had put her convenience ahead of my needs. It was just the most brutal. My mind drifted to Northwestern University, 23 years ago. Agnes, bright-eyed and determined to study business, standing in my kitchen with acceptance letters spread across the table. Dad, I got into Northwestern. Can you believe it? I could believe it. I'd helped her with every application, every essay. What I couldn't believe was the tuition bill, $40,000. My engineer's salary was decent, but that amount would mean working overtime for years, skipping vacations, postponing my own retirement dreams. But seeing her face that day, so full of hope and ambition, how could I say no? I worked 60-hour weeks for 4 years straight, weekends at the consulting firm, holidays spent on project reviews. My back ached constantly from hunching over blueprints, and I lived on coffee and determination. Agnes graduated magna cum laude. I was so proud. Then came the wedding. Martin Harper, a smooth-talking entrepreneur with big dreams and bigger debts. I didn't trust him from the start, but Agnes was in love, and she wanted a fairy tale wedding. Dad, you only get married once. I want it to be perfect. $15,000 for one day. The venue, the flowers, the photographer, everything had to be the best. I emptied my vacation fund, borrowed against my pension, worked extra shifts until my hands shook from exhaustion. The marriage lasted 2 years before they separated. Then they got back together, then separated again. Through every crisis, every reconciliation, every new business venture of Martin's that failed, I was there with my checkbook. Down payment for their first house, $12,000. Loan for Martin's restaurant that went bankrupt, $8,000. Emergency help when Agnes lost her first job, $3,000. Car repair when their BMW broke down, $1,500. I'd kept mental track over the years, the way engineers keep track of load calculations. The numbers were staggering. Over $100,000, not counting the countless weekends spent helping them move, the birthday gifts, the Christmas presents that stretched my budget every year. And last night, when I lay dying in this very hospital, Agnes couldn't leave a party. I rolled onto my side, ignoring the pull of IV tubes, and looked out at the Chicago skyline. Somewhere out there, in their Lincoln Park condo that I'd helped them afford, Agnes and Martin were probably laughing with friends, drinking expensive wine, celebrating another year of Martin's worthless life. She'd try to visit sometime this week if her schedule permitted. As if I were a dentist appointment she could reschedule. The anger built slowly, starting as a warm knot in my stomach and spreading upward until my chest burned with something that had nothing to do with cardiac damage. For 68 years, I'd been the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who sacrificed so others could succeed. What had it gotten me? A daughter who valued party planning over her father's life. A son-in-law who'd never worked an honest day but lived like royalty on my generosity. A lonely hospital room where I processed the brutal mathematics of unconditional love. I'd given Agnes everything. Now it was time to see what she'd do when that everything was at stake. My heart monitor beeped steadily in the darkness, each pulse a reminder that I was still alive, still capable of making decisions about my life and my legacy. Agnes thought she could ignore me, take me for granted, treat me like an inconvenience. She was about to learn how wrong she was. The morning light filtered through my hospital window as I swallowed the array of pills Nurse Janet had lined up on my bedside table. 3 days had passed since Dr. Ellis delivered his devastating news, and while my heart was healing, something else inside me was crystallizing. "Time for your walk, Mr. Dunn," announced Rita, the physical therapist. Her cheerful demeanor grated against my mood, but I complied. We shuffled down the corridor, my legs still shaky but stronger than yesterday. The cardiac wing hummed with quiet conversations and beeping machines. In room 352, I noticed an elderly man sitting alone, staring at a wilted flower arrangement. "Good morning," I said, pausing at his doorway. He looked up with tired eyes. "Morning. You're the engineer from 347, right? I'm Harold." "Benjamin." I leaned against the doorframe, grateful for the rest. "You seem troubled." Harold's laugh held no humor. "My son cleaned out my savings account while I was here. $35,000. Said he needed it for his business." He gestured at the dying flowers. "These came with a card saying he was sorry. No visit, no phone call, just sorry." The words hit me like a physical blow. Here was another father, another betrayal. "Family," Harold continued bitterly. "They think we'll always forgive them because we're their parents." I returned to my room deeply unsettled. That afternoon, I made my first phone call. "Chase Bank Customer Service, this is Michelle." "This is Benjamin Dunn. I need information about revoking power of attorney on my accounts." "I'll need to verify your identity first, Mr. Dunn." After the standard questions, she continued, "To revoke power of attorney, you'll need to appear in person with proper documentation and file formal revocation papers." "What documentation, exactly?" "Photo ID, original power of attorney document, and signed revocation forms. The process takes 24 hours to complete once filed." I thanked her and hung up, my mind racing. Agnes had power of attorney over my accounts, something I'd granted her 2 years ago when I'd had pneumonia and needed help managing bills. At the time, it seemed practical. Now it felt like I'd handed her a loaded weapon. The following week crawled by with methodical precision. Each day brought small improvements, walking further without assistance, eating solid foods, reducing pain medication. But more importantly, each day brought new information. Wednesday, I called Thompson and Associates, the notary office downtown. Regarding will modifications, the receptionist explained, Illinois law requires the testator to appear in person with two witnesses present. We also recommend mental competency verification if there have been recent health issues. What kind of verification? Usually a letter from your attending physician stating you're mentally competent to make legal decisions. Perfect. Dr. Ellis would provide that documentation without question. By Friday, my discharge plan was taking shape. Agnes had called once, a brief, obligatory conversation where she asked about my condition with the same enthusiasm someone might reserve for discussing the weather. I'm doing much better, I told her. That's great, Dad. Martin and I have been so busy with his new consulting venture. We'll try to visit once you're home and settled. Try to visit. As if seeing her recovering father was an inconvenience to schedule around more important activities. Thursday evening, I met Eleanor from room 341. She was recovering from gallbladder surgery and had been abandoned by her daughter during the ordeal. 30 years I raised that girl, Eleanor confided as we sat in the hospital's small garden area. Put her through college, helped with her wedding, babysat her children every weekend. When I needed surgery, she said she couldn't take time off work. Too important, she said. I listened, recognizing my own story reflected in hers. We were a generation of parents who'd given everything, only to discover our children had learned to take, but never to give back. What will you do? I asked. Eleanor's eyes hardened. Change my will. Every penny goes to the animal shelter now. At least dogs are loyal. Her words resonated long into the night. Friday brought my final consultation with Dr. Ellis. He pronounced me ready for discharge, prescribed medications, and scheduled follow-up appointments. As he prepared to leave, he paused at the door. Benjamin, I hope you'll consider forgiveness. Holding on to anger isn't good for your heart. I smiled, surprising myself with how genuine it felt. Doctor, anger isn't what I'm holding on to. It's clarity. That evening I sat by my window, watching the Chicago skyline twinkle in the darkness. Somewhere out there, Agnes and Martin were living their comfortable life, sustained by my decades of sacrifice and completely indifferent to my near-death experience. Tomorrow I would go home. Tomorrow I would begin reclaiming control of my life. The power of attorney would be revoked, the will would be changed, and Agnes would learn that taking her father for granted had consequences she never imagined. I wasn't seeking revenge, I was seeking justice. There's a difference, and an engineer understands the precision required for both. The discharge process began at 8 a.m. sharp. Dr. Martinez handed me a folder thick with papers, medication schedules, dietary restrictions, follow-up appointment cards. My signature felt shaky on the forms, but my resolve remained steady. Remember, no heavy lifting for 6 weeks, he instructed, checking boxes on his clipboard. And if you experience any chest pain or shortness of breath, call immediately. I nodded, though my mind was already racing ahead to more pressing matters than medical restrictions. Dr. Ellis appeared as I was gathering my few belongings from the bedside table. He looked tired, the way doctors do when they've delivered too much bad news to too many families. Benjamin, I wanted to see you off personally. He sat on the edge of my bed. You've been through a tremendous ordeal, both physically and emotionally. Take time to heal completely before making any major decisions. Doctor, you've been more family to me these past 2 weeks than my actual family. I meant every word. Thank you for your honesty about Agnes. It was painful, but necessary. He studied my face carefully. Forgiveness can be healing too, you know. Sometimes people don't realize the impact of their choices until consequences teach them. I finished his sentence differently than he'd intended. You're right about that. After Dr. Ellis left, I completed the final paperwork. The discharge nurse, a young woman with kind eyes, wheeled me to the hospital entrance in the mandatory wheelchair, despite my protests. Hospital policy, she explained cheerfully. Liability issues. The April morning air hit me like a revelation. 2 weeks of recycled hospital air had made me forget how alive real air could feel. Chicago stretched before me, bustling with people who had families that cared whether they lived or died. I reached for my phone with fingers that trembled slightly, whether from weakness or anticipation, I couldn't tell. Chase Bank, customer service. This is Benjamin Dunn, account number 4478921. I need to revoke power of attorney on all my accounts immediately. I can help with that information, Mr. Dunn. However, revocation requires your physical presence at a branch office with proper documentation. What documents do I need? Photo identification, the original power of attorney papers, and you'll need to sign revocation forms in the presence of a bank officer. I'll be there this afternoon. Which branch handles these procedures? Our main downtown branch at 125 South LaSalle can process revocations. They're open until 4 p.m. Perfect. Time enough to go home, collect the necessary papers, and begin reclaiming my life. I opened my phone's ride-sharing app, though the technology still felt foreign compared to the simple act of calling a taxi. My fingers moved slowly across the screen, selecting my home address in Evanston. The app indicated a driver named Victor would arrive in 8 minutes. 8 minutes to stand on this sidewalk and feel the weight of my decisions settling around me like a comfortable coat. A businessman rushed past, shouting into his phone about quarterly reports and missing his daughter's recital. A young mother pushed a stroller while juggling her own phone call about daycare schedules. Everyone had responsibilities, priorities, people who needed them. Everyone except me. But that was about to change. For 68 years, I'd been the dependable one, the provider, the safety net for everyone else's dreams and failures. I'd worked overtime to pay for Agnes's education, emptied my savings for her wedding, sacrificed my retirement security for her husband's failed businesses. And when I lay dying, she couldn't leave a party. My phone buzzed. Your driver, Victor, is arriving in a white Honda Accord. I watched as the car pulled up to the curb, its driver, a middle-aged man with graying temples, stepping out to help me with my small hospital bag. Time to go home. Time to collect those power of attorney documents. Time to visit Chase Bank and begin the process of taking back control of my financial life. Agnes thought she could ignore me, take me for granted, treat me like an inconvenience. She was about to discover how expensive that assumption would prove to be. Victor Ramirez stepped around his white Honda with the easy grace of someone who'd spent decades helping people into his car. His weathered face showed immediate concern when he saw me emerging from the hospital entrance. Northwestern Memorial? You okay, my friend? He reached for my hospital bag without being asked. I'm better now, I replied, settling into the passenger seat. The car smelled of coffee and pine air freshener, with a rosary hanging from the rearview mirror and a small photo of a young man taped to the dashboard. Evanston, right? Up on Sheridan Road? Victor checked his GPS and pulled into traffic. Heart trouble? I nodded, surprised by his directness. Most people danced around medical issues. My father had 3 heart attacks, Victor continued, navigating toward Lakeshore Drive. Tough man, worked construction for 40 years. Each time we thought we'd lose him. Did your family rally around him? Victor's laugh held an edge of bitterness. Oh, we did. The first time. By the third, my siblings were complaining about hospital visits, interfering with their schedules. He glanced at me in the mirror. Family's complicated, isn't it? The question hung between us as we merged onto Lakeshore Drive. Lake Michigan stretched endlessly to our right, its surface choppy under the April wind. Downtown Chicago's skyline rose behind us, looking smaller with each mile north. My daughter couldn't even leave her husband's birthday party, I found myself saying, when the doctor told her I might not survive the night. Victor's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Ah, man, that hurts. How old is she? 42. Old enough to understand priorities. You'd think so. Victor was quiet for a moment, then gestured toward the photo on his dashboard. That's my son, Eduardo. Lives in Los Angeles now. Big shot marketing executive. Beautiful house. Expensive car. You must be proud. I was. Haven't heard from him in 5 years. Victor's voice carried the weight of profound disappointment. Last time we talked, he asked me to stop calling so much, said it was embarrassing when his colleagues heard about his taxi driver father. The words hit me like a physical blow. Here was someone who understood the unique pain of being discarded by the person you'd sacrificed everything to raise. How do you deal with that kind of betrayal? Victor took the Belmont exit, heading north through Lincoln Park. I learned something important, Benjamin. Family isn't just blood. Family is who shows up when you need them, who answers the phone at midnight, who sits in hospital waiting rooms. I considered this as we passed the neighborhood where Agnes and Martin lived. Their condo was probably 8 blocks west of here, filled with expensive furniture I'd helped them buy. After Eduardo cut me out of his life, I spent 2 years angry, Victor continued, bitter, resentful, wondering where I went wrong. Then I realized something. I was giving him power over my happiness, even after he'd abandoned me. So what did you do? I started living for myself, started taking trips I'd always wanted to take, learned guitar, made real friends who actually want my company. He smiled, and for the first time it reached his eyes. Found out I'm pretty good company when I'm not wasting time on ungrateful children. We'd reached Evanston now, passing the campus where I'd sent Agnes for her expensive education. Students walked the sidewalks with backpacks and dreams, most probably supported by parents who thought sacrifice equaled love. The thing is, Victor said, turning onto my street, they think we'll always be there, always forgive, always enable. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for ungrateful children is let them face the consequences of their choices. My house appeared ahead, a modest 2-story colonial, with a small front yard I'd maintained religiously until my health declined. It looked smaller somehow, less significant than when I'd left for the grocery store 2 weeks ago. Victor pulled into my driveway and turned to face me fully. Benjamin, I don't know your situation completely, but if your daughter thinks she can ignore you when you're dying, maybe it's time she learned what life looks like without her father's support. He helped me out of the car, refusing my offer of a tip. My number's in your phone now, he said, handing me a business card. You need anything? Rides? Groceries? Someone to talk to? You call me. That's what real family does. I stood in my driveway, watching Victor drive away, his words echoing in my mind. Family is who shows up when you need them. Agnes hadn't shown up, but Victor had. Dr. Ellis had. Even Harold and Eleanor, fellow patients, had shown more compassion than my own daughter. Time to start living for myself. Time to let Agnes learn what consequences look like. My key turned in the front door lock for the first time in 2 weeks, and the familiar click sent a wave of relief through my chest. Home. The house smelled slightly stale from being closed up, but it was my sanctuary, my controlled environment, where... The doorbell rang aggressively, followed immediately by harsh knocking. I'd barely set my hospital bag down in the entryway when the pounding intensified. Through the frosted glass, I could see 2 figures on my porch. "Dad, open up! We know you're in there!" Agnes's voice carried that particular edge of fury I remembered from her teenage years, but this was different, sharper, more desperate. I opened the door to find my daughter and son-in-law standing like an invasion force. Agnes pushed past me without invitation, Martin following with his usual swagger. "What stupid thing did you do with the power of attorney?" Agnes spun to face me, her perfectly styled hair disheveled, her business suit wrinkled. "The bank called us an hour ago." "Stupid?" I closed the door slowly, buying myself a moment to process their ambush. "I was dying in Northwestern Memorial, and you were at a birthday party." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Martin stepped forward, using his height to intimidate. "Old man, you don't understand what you're messing with here. You need financial supervision. The heart attack clearly affected your judgment." "My judgment?" I moved to my living room, forcing them to follow me into my territory. My judgment told me to revoke access to my accounts from people who couldn't be bothered to visit their dying father. Agnes's face flushed red. "We didn't know it was that serious. The doctor made it sound routine. Dr. Ellis told you I might not survive the night." My voice stayed level, engineer calm. "You said you were busy." "That's not... How did you..." Agnes stammered, realizing her mistake. Martin grabbed her arm, stopping her from revealing more. "Listen, Benjamin, you're confused. Heart attacks cause memory problems, confusion about events. We were there for you." I sat down in my favorite armchair, the one I'd bought myself after working overtime to pay for Agnes's wedding. "You're lying to my face in my own living room. Dad, you're being manipulated by hospital staff." Agnes's voice took on that wheedling tone she'd used as a child when caught in mischief. They probably filled your head with stories to make you angry at us. Get out. The words came out quiet but absolute. Martin's face darkened. You can't just kick us out. We're family. We have rights. This is my house. You have no rights here. I stood up, surprised by my own steadiness. You're trespassing. Agnes moved between Martin and me, her businesswoman persona cracking. Dad, please, let's discuss this rationally. You're making a huge mistake that affects all of us. The only mistake I made was trusting you with access to my life savings. Martin's hands clenched into fists. You ungrateful old fool. We've sacrificed for you. Agnes has spent years managing your affairs, and this is how you repay us? Sacrificed? The word tasted bitter. I paid for your restaurant that failed. I covered your credit card debts. I gave you the down payment for your condo. What exactly have you sacrificed? Our time, our energy, dealing with your needs while we're trying to build our own lives. Agnes shot Martin a warning look, but the damage was done. Their true feelings were finally in the open. I walked to the front door and held it open. Get out of my house, immediately. This isn't over, Dad. Agnes's mask had completely fallen away, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. We'll fight this. We'll prove you're not competent to make these decisions. Martin leaned close as he passed, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. You have no idea what you've started, old man. They left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. I stood there for a long moment, listening to their car doors slam and their engine roar to life as they sped away. In the sudden silence, I could hear my heart monitor would have been beeping rapidly if I'd still been wearing one. I turned the deadbolt with shaking fingers, the metallic click echoing through my suddenly quiet home. The silence felt profound after their aggressive intrusion, but not peaceful, charged, like the air before a storm. Walking through my living room, I straightened the throw pillow Agnes had knocked askew when she gestured wildly during her tirade. Such a small thing, but in my orderly world, it felt like evidence of violation. We'll prove you're not competent to make these decisions. Agnes's parting threat replayed in my mind as I moved to the kitchen, my legs still unsteady from the confrontation and the long morning. I filled my kettle with water, the familiar ritual helping settle my nerves. Tea had always been my thinking drink. While waiting for the water to boil, I processed what had just happened. They'd driven straight from the bank to confront me. No phone call, no attempt at civil conversation, just demands and threats in my own home. Martin's aggression had been particularly revealing. The way he'd called me old man, used his size to intimidate, threatened me in my own living room. This wasn't grief or confusion about the power of attorney cancellation. This was desperation. The kettle whistled and I poured water over Earl Grey leaves, watching the amber color spread through the cup. My hands were steadier now. I carried my tea to the living room window that faced the street. Agnes's BMW was gone, but I could still feel the echo of their presence, the way you can sense someone has been in your house even after they leave. We have rights. We'll fight this. Martin had revealed more than he'd intended. They weren't just upset about losing financial access, they were panicked, which suggested they'd been depending on my money more than I'd realized. I settled into my reading chair, the one I'd positioned perfectly to catch the afternoon light. From here I could see Mrs. Rodriguez tending her garden next door, the mailman making his rounds, normal suburban life continuing as if my world hadn't just shifted on its axis. The confrontation had clarified something important. Canceling the power of attorney wasn't enough. If they were willing to storm into my house making threats, they'd be willing to take more drastic measures. We'll prove you're not competent. That threat carried serious implications. If they could convince a court I was mentally incompetent due to the heart attack, they could regain control of my finances through guardianship proceedings. They could have me declared unable to manage my own affairs. I pulled my notebook from the side table, the same one I'd used for engineering calculations for decades. Now I needed to calculate something different, how to protect myself from my own family. Agnes had legal training from her business career. Martin had connections in the city from his various failed ventures. Together, they could mount a serious challenge to my independence, but they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd revealed their true motivations too clearly. This wasn't about concern for my welfare. It was about money. pure and simple. I wrote in my notebook, Agnes and Martin, financial desperation, willing to use legal system against me, need stronger protective measures. The afternoon sun slanted through my windows, warming the familiar room where I'd spent countless evenings, reading, planning, living my quiet life. That life was over now. They'd made sure of that with their threats and demands. I thought about Victor's words during our ride home. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for ungrateful children is let them face the consequences of their choices. Canceling the power of attorney had been consequence number one. But if they wanted to escalate this conflict, I was prepared to show them exactly how expensive their greed would become. I reached for the phone. Time to call Thompson and Associates about updating my will. 2 days later, Mrs. Rodriguez approached me as I checked my mail, her usually warm demeanor replaced by awkward hesitation. "Benjamin, how are you feeling? After your incident?" The way she said incident sent warning signals through my engineer's brain. I'd known Maria Rodriguez for 15 years. She'd never been awkward around me. "I'm recovering well, thank you." "Why do you ask?" She glanced toward her house, then back at me with obvious discomfort. "Your daughter stopped by yesterday. She seemed very concerned about you living alone after the heart attack." My blood pressure spiked, but I kept my voice level. "Agnes was here? She said you've become forgetful, confused about things, that you might need supervision." Maria's voice carried genuine worry mixed with something else, doubt about me. "What exactly did she tell you?" Maria shifted her gardening gloves between her hands. "That you've been making irrational financial decisions, canceling important arrangements without understanding the consequences. She asked me to keep an eye on you, call her if you seemed unstable." The systematic nature of their attack became clear. They weren't just threatening legal action, they were poisoning my community relationships, building a case for incompetency by manipulating people who cared about me. "Maria, did I seem confused or unstable when we talked about your rose garden last week?" She looked relieved to focus on something concrete. "No, you were perfectly normal. Gave me excellent advice about the aphid problem." "Then trust that judgment over gossip." 3 days later, I visited the Chase Bank downtown to finalize additional account security measures. The branch manager, Janet Chen, pulled me aside after our business concluded. "Mr. Dunn, I probably shouldn't mention this, but your daughter was here yesterday, asking about procedures for financial guardianship." Ice formed in my stomach. "Guardianship?" She wanted to know what medical documentation would be required to have someone declared unable to manage their own finances. I told her I couldn't discuss specific procedures, but Janet lowered her voice. She seemed very focused on post-heart attack, cognitive impairment claims. "Did she file any paperwork?" "No, but she scheduled a consultation with our legal department for next week." I thanked Janet and left the bank with a growing sense of urgency. Agnes wasn't making idle threats. She was researching legal strategies to have me declared incompetent. By the following Tuesday, the scope of their campaign became fully apparent. At Brewster's Coffee, where I'd been a regular for a decade, the owner's greeting felt strained. "Benjamin, good to see you're managing okay." Even Tom Brewster, who'd known me since Agnes was in college, was treating me like I might be losing my faculties. "Tom, did someone suggest I wasn't managing well?" His face reddened. "Your daughter and her husband stopped by. They mentioned you'd been having some difficulties since the hospital, making impulsive decisions, getting confused about money matters." I ordered my usual black coffee, paid with exact change, and made casual conversation about the Cubs' season prospects. Tom relaxed as I demonstrated complete mental clarity. "You seem fine to me," he admitted as I prepared to leave. "That's because I am fine. Remember that when people suggest otherwise." That evening I sat in my kitchen tallying the evidence of their systematic character assassination. 3 neighbors contacted, my bank, local businesses where I was known. They were building a narrative of post-heart attack cognitive decline, preparing witnesses who could testify to my supposed incompetence. The engineering part of my mind admired their thoroughness, even as I felt violated by their manipulation. They'd turned my community relationships into weapons against me. I pulled out my notebook and wrote, "Agnes and Martin, Organized Competency Challenge Campaign. Timeline, approximately 1 week. Targets, neighbors, bank, local businesses. Goal: establish pattern of cognitive decline for legal guardianship. Below that, I added, counter strategy required, immediate action necessary. I reached for the phone and dialed Thompson and Associates. This is Benjamin Dunn. I need to accelerate my will modification appointment. How soon can we meet? We have an opening tomorrow at 10 a.m. I'll be there. I understood now that they'd declared war on my independence, my reputation, and my right to control my own life. They thought an elderly heart attack patient would be easy to manipulate and defeat. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The elevator climbed to the 14th floor of the LaSalle Street building, carrying me toward what would either be my salvation or the beginning of a legal war I might not survive. Through the elevator's glass walls, Chicago spread below me, a city where families either supported each other or destroyed each other, and I'd finally learned which category mine belonged to. James Mitchell's office occupied a corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. His receptionist, a professional woman in her 30s, led me to a conference room where Mitchell waited with legal documents already spread across a polished mahogany table. "Mr. Dunn, please have a seat." Mitchell was perhaps 50, with graying temples and the careful demeanor of someone who'd handled thousands of family disputes. "Before we proceed, I need to ask some standard questions to verify your mental competency." I appreciated his directness. "Go ahead." "What's today's date?" "May 12th, 2025, Tuesday." "Who's the current president?" "Donald Trump, unfortunately." Mitchell smiled briefly. "Can you tell me why you're here today?" "I want to completely revoke my current will and create a new one that disinherits my daughter and son-in-law entirely." "That's a significant decision. Are you certain this is what you want?" I pulled out my notebook, the same one I'd used to document Agnes and Martin's campaign against me. "I've spent 3 weeks documenting their behavior since my heart attack. They've manipulated my neighbors, attempted to have me declared incompetent, and threatened me in my own home." Mitchell reviewed my notes with professional interest. "This is thorough documentation. What specifically triggered this decision?" "My daughter couldn't be bothered to leave her husband's birthday party when I was dying. Then they tried to destroy my reputation when I took back control of my finances." "I see." Mitchell made notes on his legal pad. "Illinois law allows complete disinheritance, but I need to ensure this document can withstand any competency challenges they might bring." "What kind of challenges?" "They could claim the heart attack affected your judgment, that you're not mentally capable of making such decisions. Your documentation helps, but I'll include specific language preventing such challenges." Mitchell spent the next hour crafting language that would make my will ironclad. The new document left everything, my house, savings, investments, personal property, to the American Heart Association. Agnes and Martin would receive exactly $1 each, just to prove I hadn't forgotten them. "This clause here," Mitchell pointed to a paragraph he'd written, "specifically states that you're of sound mind and body, that this decision was made after careful consideration, and that any attempts to contest based on mental incompetency will result in automatic loss of even the $1 bequests." "Perfect." 2 witnesses from Mitchell's office, paralegals who'd never met me before, entered the conference room. Their presence would provide independent verification of my mental state during the signing. "Mr. Dunn, do you understand the contents of this will?" Mitchell asked formally. "I understand completely. I'm leaving my entire estate to charity and disinheriting my daughter and son-in-law. Are you making this decision freely, without coercion or pressure?" "Absolutely freely. It's the most logical decision I've ever made." I signed my name with steady hands, the same hands that had drafted engineering blueprints for 40 years. The witnesses signed below my signature, and Mitchell notarized the document with his official seal. "This will is now legally binding," Mitchell said, placing the original in his office safe. "I'll file a copy with the Cook County Probate Court tomorrow. Your estate is now protected." Walking back to the elevator, I felt lighter than I had in months. Agnes and Martin had declared war on my competency, my reputation, and my independence. Now they would discover the cost of that war. The elevator descended toward street level, carrying me back to a world where I was no longer a victim of my family's greed. 3 days later, I sat in my living room watching the afternoon shadows lengthen across the same carpet, where Agnes and Martin had threatened me 2 weeks ago. The signed will rested securely in Mitchell's office safe, but its power resided in my knowledge that their financial future had just evaporated. I dialed Agnes's number at exactly 4 p.m., timing chosen to catch them both at home, giving them hours to absorb what I was about to tell them. "Dad?" Agnes sounded surprised, but pleased. "How are you feeling?" "Much better, actually. I'm calling to inform you about something important." I kept my voice conversational, almost casual. "I've changed my will." Silence stretched across the line for several heartbeats. "Changed it how?" "Completely. When I die, you'll receive nothing." "What? What are you talking about?" Her voice climbed an octave. "Nothing? That's impossible." "Everything goes to the American Heart Association. You and Martin will each receive exactly $1 to prove I didn't forget you." The phone clattered as if she'd dropped it. Then I heard frantic whispering. Martin's voice joined the call. "Benjamin, you can't be serious about this nonsense." "Dead serious, Martin. The new will was signed 3 days ago, witnessed, notarized, and filed with probate court." Agnes's voice returned, shaking now. "Dad, this is insane. You can't just... We need to talk about this face to face. Feel free to come over." The line went dead. I made myself a cup of tea and settled back into my reading chair to wait. The afternoon sun painted everything golden, peaceful, while somewhere across the city, Agnes and Martin were undoubtedly having a very different kind of afternoon. They arrived in 47 minutes. I timed it. The doorbell rang with the same aggressive urgency as 2 weeks ago, but this time I held all the power. Agnes rushed past me the moment I opened the door, Martin close behind. But their body language had changed completely. Where before they'd been demanding and threatening, now they seemed smaller, desperate. "Dad, please tell me this is some kind of joke." Agnes's perfect composure had cracked. Her hair was disheveled, her business suit wrinkled as if she'd been pacing. "No joke. Legal documents don't have punchlines." Martin tried his usual intimidation tactics, stepping close to me. "Old man, you don't know what you're doing. This decision affects more than just us." "Really? Who else does it affect?" "Our future, our plans, our..." He stopped himself before admitting their complete financial dependence. Agnes dropped into my couch without invitation, her hands shaking. "Daddy, I made mistakes. I know I did. But completely cutting me out? That's not who you are." "You're right. The father who would have accepted your neglect and abuse died in Northwestern Memorial. I'm someone different now. We can work through this." Agnes's voice took on the pleading tone she'd used as a child, when she'd broken something valuable. "I'll be better, more attentive. I'll call every day. Agnes, where were you on April 14th when I was dying?" She froze. How do you know about... Dr. Ellis told me everything. About how you couldn't leave Martin's birthday party. About how you said you'd try to visit if your schedule permitted." Martin's face darkened. "That doctor violated patient confidentiality. He told a patient how his family responded to his emergency. That's not a violation. That's honesty." Agnes began crying, actual tears streaming down her cheeks. "I was wrong. I made a terrible mistake. But you can't punish me for the rest of my life." "I'm not punishing you for the rest of your life." I sat across from her, calm while she fell apart. "I'm punishing you for the rest of mine." Martin knelt beside Agnes, both of them now below my eye level. "Please, Benjamin, we're begging you, don't do this. Now you know exactly how it feels to be abandoned in your darkest hour." Agnes looked up at me through her tears, mascara streaking down her cheeks, like war paint washed away by defeat. "Please, Daddy, I'm sorry. I'm so, so sorry." "Sorry you got caught, or sorry you did it?" Martin grabbed her arm, pulling her to her feet. His face had transformed from pleading to something darker, more desperate. "Fine. You want to play this game, old man? We'll see about that." "What game, Martin?" "The competency hearing. We'll prove you're mentally unfit. That heart attack scrambled your brain, made you paranoid and vindictive." His voice gained strength as he built his argument. No rational person destroys their family over a misunderstanding. Agnes wiped her face, her business persona reasserting itself. "Dad, we've already spoken to people about your, condition, your neighbors, your bank. They're concerned about your decision-making." I stood up slowly. using my full height advantage. You mean the lies you've been spreading? The manipulation campaign you've been running? It's not manipulation when it's true. Martin's mask had completely slipped now. You're old, sick, and making irrational decisions. The only irrational decision I made was trusting you with my financial information for 2 years. Agnes moved to block my path to the door. We're not leaving until you agree to reconsider. You're not staying regardless. I walked around her toward the front door. This is still my house. Martin stepped between me and the exit. You'll regret this decision, Benjamin. We'll fight this will with everything we have. With what money? Oh, that's right. You don't have any. The truth of their situation hit them simultaneously. Without access to my accounts, without the promise of inheritance, they had no resources for legal challenges. Agnes's face went pale. You can't just abandon us like this. Watch me. Martin's hands clenched into fists. You think you're so smart, but you're just a bitter old man dying alone. Better alone than surrounded by people who see me as an ATM. This isn't over, Agnes hissed, her grief transforming into pure rage. We'll find a way to contest this. We'll prove you're incompetent. You'll do exactly what you did when I was dying. Nothing. I opened the front door wide. Because when it matters, you only think about yourselves. Martin leaned close as he passed, his voice dropping to a whisper. You have no idea what you've started? This war isn't over. Agnes paused in the doorway, her face a mixture of pain and calculation. I'm still your daughter, no matter what legal documents say, and daughters have rights. Daughters who show up have rights. Daughters who abandon their fathers have consequences. They left, but not quietly this time. Agnes slammed the door hard enough to rattle the windows. I heard them arguing in the driveway, their voices carrying across the neighborhood as they fought about blame and strategies and lawyers they couldn't afford. I locked the door and returned to my living room, settling back into my chair as their car roared away. The house felt peaceful again, though I knew this peace was temporary. They'd meant their threats. They would try to challenge the will, try to prove incompetency, try to reclaim what they considered their birthright. But I'd been engineering solutions to complex problems for 40 years. Every structure I'd ever designed had to withstand pressure, weather, and time. This legal structure would do the same. Outside, the Chicago evenings settled over my quiet street. Somewhere in the city, Agnes and Martin were plotting their next move. But for now, in my own home, surrounded by the life I'd built with my own hands and mind, I was exactly where I belonged. The phone rang. I let it ring. If you liked this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.